Talking Cougars is brought to you by Safeway. Come see what's fresh.
This is Talking Cougars Season 3, Episode 2 of Michael Bumpers with my quarterback, Alex Brink and B. Snuck away with one of the Palouse, 13-10. I felt like it was going to be close, but I didn't think it was going to be this close.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be this close either, Bump. I mean, look, Idaho's a good football team for sure. Even with a new coaching staff, they returned a ton of players from last year's roster. I think over 50 letter winners or close to it. The offensive coordinator is a holdover from last year as well. But boy, I thought their defense really came to play. They caused all sorts of problems for Washington State's offense, particularly its offensive line and the running game. But in the end, Bump, the defense saved the day for Washington State, and we had a surprise starter at quarterback for the Cougs. Young Jackson Potter got the nod from Jimmy Rogers, and he kind of saved the day too, man, with a 2-minute drive to lead to the kick by Jack Stevens for the win.
Yeah, Potter looked good. I like what I saw. He did miss some throws, but you expect that, right? You're getting your first start at this level, maybe some jitters. He had a wide open receiver that he missed over on the sideline, but it's all good. He settled down and made this thing go. I was surprised. Off air, we were talking. He said, there might be a surprise at quarterback, and you were exactly right with Potter getting the start. He's rocking the number 5, so you already know I got some love for him there. But he looked good. He looked good. He made the plays he was supposed to make, and like you said, when it was time to win, he drove the football down the field and gave the Cougs a chance. That's all you can ask for.
No doubt about it, and that's going to lead us right into you and I's offensive MVPs. And my offensive MVP, you already know it, it's going to be the quarterback, Jackson Potter. And it wasn't a great night offensively by any means, but one of the bright spots was the quarterback. And I went back and watched the film. I felt this way live. I thought he played really well. You mentioned it. He had a couple misses. Listen, I've been there. I've been a first-time starter as a young player. It happens. You're going to miss a couple. But he made some big-time throws as well. And frankly, Bum, the only 2 drives that produced points for Washington State were drives where he was off the leash and allowed to throw the football. The first drive for a touchdown, it was a bunch of play action and him on the run, and he executed along with Josh Meredith. And then that 2-minute drive like we talked about where that young man looked smooth like Tom Brady in the pocket, dropping back, leading the Cougs down. Jackson Potter was my MVP with a touchdown pass and over 200 yards passing.
So naturally, you go quarterback, and I got to go receiver, man. You said his name already. Josh Meredith got the scoring going for the Cougs. And what I like about that touchdown that he had, B, was that it was just a pylon. You get into the end zone. You get halfway there. Keep the DB on your inside hip. You break down, and then Potter just drops a dime right where only he can get it, and he makes a big play. Then late in the game, had a big play as well. When we were talking about the personnel coming back this year, that was one of the names that we spoke about was Meredith. We knew that he was going to have to step up and lead the charge, learn from the Kyle Williams from last year and the Kellys from the year before. Meredith is my guy. It's natural that my QB goes with a QB, and then I go with a receiver.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I remember, Bump, do you remember that summer before our senior year? We repped the heck out of that little pylon route on the red zone. I remember you running it. You looked like Josh Meredith, too, going down and getting it. As soon as Potter started sprinting out, I knew it. Come back to the pylon, and they executed that thing flawlessly at a really crucial moment. Well, the bright spot, though, Bump, of the night was the defense. They were fantastic. Who was your MVP of that defensive unit?
See, I got to apologize to my man. I looked at him, his size, his weight, 6 foot, 190 pounds, playing that kind of nickel hybrid linebacker. Caleb Fransel. I was not aware of your game, son. And I'm watching that film, and he is flying to the football. He's getting down into the backfield, taking on linemen with his inside shoulder, setting the edge. There was one play where he fell down, ran all the way across the field to still make the tackle. He was playing like a man possessed. I did not know about your game. I apologize for not giving you the love you deserve. Caleb Fransel was making plays, had me excited to watch that defensive film. Offensively, there are some struggles. You and I were talking about it, but defensively, you turn the film on, there are a few guys that just pop off the screen. He was one of them.
And honestly, for Idaho, other than Joshua Wood, the quarterback's legs and his ability to make plays off schedule, The Coug defense had them on their heels most of the night. A couple runs by the backs that you knew you were going to get because it's a good running back room for the Vandals. But 33 yards passing for Wood, they couldn't do anything. Jesse Bobbitt, the defensive coordinator, and obviously Jimmy Rogers, a defensive head coach, had a fantastic game plan, I thought, against the Vandals. The MVP for me was a young linebacker, also a transfer from South Dakota State, Anthony Polano, number 0. Just a redshirt freshman, played a few games last year for the Jackrabbits. This was his first real game where he's the guy playing wire to wire. I actually don't think, Bump, that he missed a snap on Saturday, and he was all over the field, particularly in the first half and early third quarter. I think those young legs got a little tired towards the end. That was a long football game, a bruising game. In the end, I thought Anthony Polano playing middle linebacker. That's one of the best young middle linebackers I've seen at Washington State since we saw Francisco Malangoa running sideline to sideline a few years ago for those Mike Leach coach teams.
And they're just stout. I mean, that whole second line or second level. The first level, too, I feel like we can go a few places with his defensive MVP because I thought the defensive line played decent as well. They were getting in the backfield, but no, I'm not mad at your pick at all, man. That second level really made sure that the QB had cloudy passing lanes, and whenever the ball was handed off, they were flying to the football and playing with some violence, man. That's what I liked about the defense. It had some violence to them, and they took on the challenge. The offense was struggling a little bit. The defense said, don't worry about it. We got you. We'll give you another opportunity to win this game. Tip my caps off to that defense, man. They played a real good game.
Yeah, I agree. The way they handled the situation. The situation wasn't great for them, and they handled it really well and in a really mature fashion. Well, after the game, we heard Coach Jimmy Rogers share a little bit of his disappointment at times, but in the end, they were 1-0. Let's hear what Coach Rogers had to say about this game versus the Vandals.
Some of the errors that happened were somewhat shocking to me. Just looking back at the film, maybe the lack of communication and the miscounts in the box are things that we can't have happen. At times, false stepping and just not, applying the right technique. And then I think a little bit, maybe the situation got to some of the guys. And so from the film, there's a ton to learn from. It was good to meet with the guys and just kind of get it out of our system and take the next step forward when they return this evening to really turn a page for what is going to be a tough week.
All right, Bum, that was Coach Jimmy Rogers. Did you know he's the first Cougar head coach since our coach, Bill Doba, to win his debut game? When we beat Idaho in 2003, this is the first coach to do it. Think about that. You had Paul Wolf, you had Mike Leach, you had Nick Rolovich, you had Jake Dickert, and now Jimmy Rogers was the first one to do it. So in the end, like I said before, you're not 0-1, you're 1-0. What'd you think about what Coach Rogers had to say?
I loved it. I liked how he was disappointed. He felt like this team should have played better, and I think I agree with him 100%. They should have played better, but you got away with one. And most coaches grow. I've been hearing about this all week with Kalen DeBoer and what's going down in Alabama. Most coaches grow from week 1 to week 2 the most throughout the season because this is where you realize who you really are. You go into a game like this, you think you got things all figured out, then you get hit in the mouth by a vandal, and I sneak away with a win. You're disappointed, but you'll take the W.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You take them where you can get them, and you move on to week 2. When we come back, we'll talk about the surprising decision to start Jackson Potter and what we thought about his collegiate debut. This segment is presented by Cougs First. Think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring.
You live these moments through your head out in the backyard when you're little. And Coach Kroc told me that before I went out there. And, I kind of just went back to my 6-year-old self, kind of playing in the backyard with my pops. It was pretty crisp.
This is Talking Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with my quarterback, Alex Brink. Let's talk about quarterback play. Potter got the start, something that I think a lot of people were surprised to see. He was 23 of 30, 208 yards and 1 touchdown. Why not break down the quarterback with my quarterback? What you see out of that young man?
Well, the first thing I saw was a lot of maturity, Bump. You heard it in that clip, that the way he handled the moment, right? I mean, he was very thankful and gracious to be named the starter, right? He's put in a lot of hard work. And then you get to the game, And although I think he played well, it obviously probably didn't go quite like he thought, right? He gets pulled in the third quarter for a few series. Then he gets asked to go back in and win the game. In the end, he kind of shrugged his shoulders and just acted like, man, this is my job. And that's what you want to hear from a starting quarterback, right? And some of the things I saw that I loved about Jackson Potter was, one, a big arm passer. He can stand in there and flat deliver that thing. He's a better athlete than people, I think, would probably give him credit for. He threw a ton of balls on the run. That was some of the best I thought he did, was when you ran the naked bootlegs, got out on the edge, and let him throw the ball on the move. He was really accurate. Obviously, the Josh Meredith touchdown was on the move also. So that really impressed me. And then again, just the mentality. Look, I've been there. I've been benched during a game. It's really hard to stay engaged when you get benched and you don't know what's going to happen next. And then all of a sudden you get thrown in the game. And guess what? That was the moment when you got asked to go win it. And he, again, I interviewed him after the game in the locker room, and he just looked at me and smiled and said, that was the best I felt all game. It felt like practice. We practiced that 2-minute drill all camp, all spring. And so to me, I thought that was the most impressive thing, was that young man's mentality from the neck up.
Yeah, I agree. It's I've never been pulled as a quarterback, so I can only defer to you when it comes to that, but I can imagine what that feels like. What I like early on with him was just the quick game. I mean, you can see the arm talent, right? What I judge a quarterback on his arm talent. If you can be on one side of the football field and throw a speed out to the other side, and that thing is on a rope, okay, you got some arm talent there. And like you mentioned, using his athletic ability. And I think as the season goes along, they have no choice but to use his ability, especially with some of the issues that have been going on with the offensive line. You got to move him outside that pocket. So yeah, it's the resilience, it's the ability to stay focused. It was the ability to take the easy stuff with the defense is giving them. There were some concepts that were clear. There was one concept they kept running. It was like a flood. You got your arrow, you got your 8 to 10 yard out, then you have your corner. You're reading the flat defender. The defense is going to make the decision for you, and he did a pretty good job doing that. They kept going back to that at least 3 or 4 times. So that's what I liked about him, man. I was surprised. I didn't think he was going to get the start, but when it was time to win, he did exactly that.
No doubt. And, there was a couple throws, right? He missed a big throw to Meredith on the series after. The series the defense forced the fumble, right? The first fumble. And they had great field position. It was probably a chance to kind of step on the throat a little bit of the Idaho Vandals. And he just missed it, right? It sailed on him. And so, again, sometimes those things will happen. And then as the running game really never unfolded, Idaho just kept bringing more pressure, kept bringing people up. And I think that really put a little, that was a little bit of a challenge because he really didn't have a run game to lean on. For me, I would have liked to see Danny Freund, the offensive coordinator, go to some more quick passing game to the outside, right? You saw a lot of the bubble screens have success. The speed outs, like you mentioned, have success. Probably should have leaned into that more in the middle part of the game. And then ultimately, you make a decision as a coaching staff to go to maybe a little bit better athlete in Julian Duggar, hoping it's going to reap some rewards. And it didn't, and so you go back again to Jackson Potter, and you heard Jimmy Rogers after the game and in his post game. He said, hey, maybe we shouldn't have done that, but this is why we did it. I actually like that. He admitted that maybe it wasn't the best move, but he had a valid reason for why they decided to do it.
Yeah, you're searching. You're trying to find something to get this offense going. And hindsight is always 20/20. I think Potter has established himself, at least in the short term. Look, I'm going to be the guy. But if you have another weapon on the sideline and you think that he's going to bring something different and dynamic to the ball game, why not throw him in there, especially early, week 1, week 2. Once you get into the season, I think everyone kind of establishes themselves and you know who is who. I'm just going to talk about the receivers for a little bit, man. You don't have the Kyle Williams of last year, right? You just don't have that guy. What you do have are just some gritty receivers out there, guys who have to understand how to sit in the zone, how to be efficient at the top of their routes, and just make plays. They're not going to impress you with their size or with their speed or athletic ability, but they are skilled enough to work in this offense. So I think as the season progresses, you're going to have Meredith rise to the top. You had, who was the other guy who was balling? You had Tony Freeman, who had 7 catches for about 67 yards. I think they're going to develop. So, not a explosive group, but a skilled group that's good enough to run this offense.
Well, and I really like, you mentioned the name Tony Freeman. He really popped for me, Bump. He's a holdover from the previous staff, junior college transfer last year. Had a couple catches against UW, if you remember, in that Apple Cup, and you thought he was going to kind of be a guy. And then it felt like there was just too many bodies in the rotation. He popped as far as his speed, his ability to break tackles. I think he could play a big part. Jeremiah Noga, the transfer from Corvallis, from the Beavers, looked really good. So I agree. I think that receiver group was solid, and I think they can help this team and help the young quarterback Jackson Potter throughout the year. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the defensive coordinator for Washington State, Jesse Bobbitt, to talk about what they did against the Vandals and what to look forward to against the San Diego State Aztecs. This segment is brought to you by Flat Stick Pub, local craft beer, mini golf, and old school fun. All right, we are back on Talkin' Cougars. Super excited to be joined by Cougar defensive coordinator Jesse Bobbitt. Coach, a really fantastic week one performance from your defense. We sure appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. It was an exciting, I would say, week one for the boys and the game, how it went. But I was really proud of the guys, and appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to talk just real quick. I mean, this is not your first trip to the Palouse. You spent a couple of years already in Pullman. What's it like to be back in Eastern Washington and back in the Crimson and Gray?
Yeah, it feels great. I was just saying it's always something I imagined I'd want to happen. I just didn't think it ever would, or especially in the way that it did with a group of people that I truly love and care about, this staff. And so it's been great to be back. I continue to say, when you combine this staff, who I believe are really good people, along with the players that are here, with the community of Pullman and the support of Washington State, I think it's a really good mix. And it's been a blessing to be back. And I'm just excited that the season's finally here and rolling, and we can continue to strive for greatness. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, we are sure happy to have you, especially based on the way things went against the University of Idaho. What are the challenges like for you? As you guys came in this offseason, you brought a ton of talent from South Dakota State. You had a couple portal additions, and then you had obviously some of the holdovers, right, from the previous staff. And it seems like with early returns, you kind of were able to meld all those guys together and put out a great product on the field. What was that process like to get to that point?
Yeah, when we got here, it was something we always talked about. If we were ever to be somewhere else, how would we install our defense? How would we build the culture again? Because it was so set in stone where we were, and it was just the guys came in, and you knew from all the other guys, well, it's going to be a whole new team and a whole new defense. We found a different way to kind of simplify our defense, and we didn't install everything necessarily in the spring. We waited to install a chunk in the summer, kind of just really ease into all the stuff that we do, because we kind of do a lot. And then from a relationship and culture standpoint on defense, we've done a lot through the spring, the summer, and fall camp. We've never unit meet as a defense every single day, and we did that and having every single guy on the defense come up and speak at different times, and creating some accountability things between coaches and players. We really came close together. And so when demanding and creating the standard that the guys are going to swarm to the ball and play the way we need to play, it honestly became pretty easy for the guys to live up to the expectation, because you're playing for the guy next year when you grow that close. It didn't happen right away, but through the process of spring and summer and into fall camp, I would say about halfway through fall camp, the standard was set, and the guys were meeting that standard for sure.
That's really cool to hear. You heard a little bit of that in some of the post-game stuff. I felt like the players just talking about, the willingness to play for each other, the freedom to run in that defense, and the excitement, frankly, about, going out and playing tough, hard-nosed football. I noticed on film, one of the things that stood out to me both while I was calling the game live, and then when I went back and watched the tape, the freedom it felt like the linebackers, thinking guys like Parker McKenna, Anthony Polano, had to run and make plays. I mean, they were getting in the backfield consistently. They were at that first level of the line of scrimmage. Is that a schematic thing that maybe is different from what Coug fans are used to seeing as far as the way the linebackers are able to play? How would you say that ends up coming about?
Yeah, I would say really, it has to do with how we play our defensive line front at times, right? We're very multiple within what we do in the front. At times, We ask the D line to take on the brunt of the O line and let the backers run free, right? And so within our scheme, a lot of football when you see it nowadays, and a lot of scheme is letting the D ends line wide and high and just roll. And at times it makes your backers have to just stick to one gap and shoot it and protect. And within what we do and how we mix up the front, it really allows our back end to be able to scrape and run and pursue the ball. And obviously you got to change that up at times, but that's the main reason why you probably saw that or will continue to see that is how we play the defensive front.
Yeah, it certainly seemed effective. I mean, guys, obviously the two backers I mentioned, but you mentioned the back end, whether it's Caleb Fransel at the nickel or watching those safeties like Matthew Durant's kind of run down and fill. There was definitely, a difference in my eyes in that, and that's super interesting. And I appreciate you sharing that because I think people really enjoy that type of insight. When you think about some of the players, particularly guys that you brought over from South Dakota State, I mean, a few of them, most of them really popped on Saturday against the University of Idaho. When you think about their skill sets, what is it about that group that really helps this defense?
I think like Caleb Fransel, like he's someone that kind of plays reckless, right, and just flies full speed to the ball. And a couple times you saw him missing some tackles, right, full speed flying to the ball. He needs to maybe be a little bit under control in space at times. But I think he just has an edge to him and a recklessness to him that he's going to lay it all out there. That's the same with like Tucker and Durant's and Colby Humphrey. We've seen the plays he made on the sideline, the big hit, and just different things. Those will continue to happen. Like when you just take those guys in the back end. Like that's how we've always played where we came from. And so at the end of the day, they've kind of like, it's been a great way for them to lead because that's the standard in our defense is to fly to the ball, to swarm, to play free. And at the end of the day, those guys set the tone for what the standard is for everyone else to see. And you see that. And so that's kind of a big thing I would say is just how they run the ball, how they swarm and the mentality they have that I got to get to the ball and we got to be physical on our finishes.
Yeah, we definitely saw that. There's no doubt about it. We'll be back here on Talkin' Cougars to break down a little bit about the San Diego State Aztec offense with defensive coordinator Jesse Bobbitt. This segment is brought to you by Valley GMC. See you in the Valley. Back here on Talkin' Cougars, we have defensive coordinator Jesse Bobbitt joining us. We talked a little bit about what this defense is schematically, some of the players that we saw making plays against the University of Idaho, but we got to look ahead because that one's in the books. And now we've got the San Diego State Aztecs coming to the Palouse on Saturday. Coach, this is obviously a high-powered offense. Sean Lewis always has very efficient offenses going back to his Kent State days. New signal caller for San Diego State in Jaden Denegal. What do you see from the Aztecs on film?
It's tough. When a team that spreads you out goes some tempo, they're able to run the ball, they run the quarterback, the RPO game, right? So their pass game's not just in drop back pass, it's in all the RPO scheme, which is obviously tough to defend when you're manipulating a defense's box fitters and all the stuff on the perimeter. So I think, between that and tempo and just the uniqueness and some of their splits and how they align, it really creates some weird space on the field, if that makes sense. And at the end of the day, playing defense is all about covering space. And so you kind of have to adjust within your scheme a little bit to be able to take some things away.
Speaking of Denegal, the transfer quarterback from Michigan, probably not a ton of tape coming in on him from when he was at Michigan, backed up J.J. McCarthy last year. The 1 week versus Stony Brook last week, threw for a couple hundred yards and a touchdown. Like you mentioned, ran the ball a little bit. Anything specific you see from Denegal that you guys are keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think he can definitely use his feet and be able to create some plays and get out of the pocket. Maybe a little bit different than last week of what we saw, what was pretty impressive. But he's able to use his feet and get out of the pocket. He has a strong arm. He'll be able to let it go over the top. At the end of the day, I think a big thing for us, if we can, get him out of the pocket and get him on the move and make it a little bit tougher on him to make those throws. Because when he's got time and he can sit back, he can throw the deep ball, and that's obviously a big part of what they do. They love their vertical concept. So.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They want to run the football and then push it downfield. That's for sure. When you mentioned in the previous segment a little bit about how schematically you guys think about defensive line play, but just in general, the defensive line, especially against Idaho, it felt like they had great pursuit to the ball. Guys like Bobby Terrell, making a ton of plays. Raheem Stevenson from the defensive end spot at that interior defensive tackle spot. How does that group fit into this game plan against a San Diego State team that rushed for over 200 yards last week?
Yeah, no, they're the forefront of it. And we got to win up front. And if they're not playing well or doing their job or having that great pursuit to the ball, then things aren't going to go well for the Cougs on a typical Saturday. I can tell you that. And so at the end of the day, it starts with them. In a game like this, we got to stop the run. We got to make them throw the RPOs if we want them to, or take those away, whatever in the back end. But the D line up front's got to do their job, trust their technique, trust their responsibility. And once you do that full speed, then you can get to the ball, then you can pursue. But our defense is built on doing your job. It's not built on just see ball, get ball, right? It's see ball, get ball once you do your job and you execute, and then I can rally. And so that's a big thing with our D line. I believe we match up well with their O-line. I think in the run and pass game, and I think a big part of this game is going to be our D-line. Hopefully having some success on Saturday and allowing us to bring 4 and get home.
When you were talking in the preseason, or right leading up to week 1, there was a great quote where you were talking about trying to hold teams below 14 points, which you did versus University of Idaho. So we're off to a good start. The other thing, I was thinking about that Idaho game, forced a couple turnovers in some big moments. How do you guys approach, the turnover game and the way you guys kind of teach and or imply that your athletes go out and turn the ball over? Is there kind of conversations you're having? Is there drill work you guys do? How does that work?
No, at least once a week in season on a Tuesday or Wednesday, we got to be working turnover drills by in position drills. But we have a huge emphasis on turnovers. In fall camp, there's a scoring system. In spring ball, there's a scoring system, and you're getting points for punch outs, even if the ball doesn't come out. So there's a lot of punches at the ball. You're getting points for scoop and scores, forced fumbles, interceptions. When you get to the ball, you're punching at the ball. Like in practice, when you're not going live, okay, well, you're not fetting up. I'm on an angle. I'm always punching at the ball. And there's a standard of doing that, right? And so it creates habits. You saw that show up on Saturday. And at the end of the day, our goal is 4 turnovers or more in a game. And that's a lot of turnovers. That includes like a 4th down stop or a missed field goal. But if you can achieve those goals and get the ball back to our offense, we're going to be in great shape.
Love to hear that goal. As a former quarterback, I want the ball in my hands as much as possible. So if the defense is going for that, that's all we can ask for. Coach, I sure appreciate you joining us on Talkin' Cougars. Good luck this weekend versus San Diego State.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
We'll be back on Talkin' Cougars.
This is Talking Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with Alex Brink. It is time now to look forward to this week's opponent, San Diego State. They beat Stony Brook 42-0. I watched the film. You watched the film. What you see out of the Aztecs?
It's a good football team, Bump. If you remember back to last year, Cougs snuck away with one down in San Diego, 29-26, and it was a John Mateer miraculous comeback, a Buda Alukta interception, right? Cougs had to kind of claw that one away. And in my opinion, this San Diego State team might be better than the one that we saw last year down in Southern California. And to me, it all starts with the defense. This defense returns a ton of players off of last year's team, including Trey White, who had 12.5 sacks last year, was leading the country in sacks for most of the year. But on top of that, they return all-conference safeties, other all-conference linebackers. I mean, man, across the board, it's a deep, fast defense. They have a new coordinator, Rob Orich, who was the D coordinator at Idaho a few years ago. It's going to be a tough matchup for a Coug offense that did not look fantastic in week 1.
Yeah, their defense is something special. You mentioned Trey Wright. He's going to line up most of the time in the boundary in a 2-point deal. And they will blitz you from depth. They'll hit you with a safety blitz. They'll hit you with a corner blitz. Linebackers will get after it as well. They will stunt on that defensive line. They're going to challenge the communication of this WSU offensive line. It's going to be interesting to see how we decide to attack this defense because, like you mentioned, lots of guys coming back, lots of talent over there. You got to be ready to go. So hot routes, be ready to go. And running backs have to be great in pass protection this week if you do decide to run the ball a bunch. Offensively, They're going to want to pack you in a little bit. They're going to be in that shotgun. Going to have your H-back over there with the wing. You're going to have 12 personnel. They're going to RPO that thing. They're going to try to make it a physical game, especially with that big quarterback they have over there as well. It's going to be interesting offensively too.
Yeah, Jaden Denegal, the quarterback transfer from Michigan, spent a couple years behind J.J. McCarthy, super highly recruited out of the San Diego area, but never got too many snaps with the Wolverines. He is a monster, Bump, 6'5", 230 pounds, and he can run. Cougs just had trouble stopping a running quarterback in Joshua Wood, who's not nearly as big as Denegal. Denegal showed up on tape with designed runs and off-schedule runs against Stony Brook, so that's something the Coug defense is going to have to be aware of. And then Lucky Sutton, the running back, had a big year as a freshman in 2023, not so much last year with Marquez Cooper back, but this year started off with a 100-yard game against Stony Brook, and you said it, you watch that tape, a lot of H-back tight ends coming across, a lot of pullers. Cougs defense is going to have to come on, take blocks, and those safeties are going to have to come up and tackle at that first and second level and get Sutton to the ground. This is going to be a physical football game, I think, on both sides of the ball for Washington State. For me, offensively for the Cougs against the defense, they're going to have to spread it out. They're going to have to go sideline to sideline, work the RPO, work the quick passing game. They are not going to be able to run this thing downhill until they loosen up the Aztec defense. So we are sure going to see a tough matchup.
Man, the slot's got to be ready to go. I mean, as a slot guy myself, when I saw all these blitz and stunts and all that stuff, I thought to myself, I would love to play against a team like this because I'm going to be the bailout for my quarterback. So I think they're going to have to do that as well. And it's about, like you mentioned, getting the football out of your hands quickly. There's not going to be too many five-step drops and all that good stuff. Get to the top, hitch forward and all that. Nah. These guys are going to be firing, getting downhill, and challenging this offensive line. That showed that they struggled a little bit. I like this matchup. The reason why I like it is because it's a different kind of matchup. It forces you to be sharp mentally if you are the QB, if you are the running back, and the offensive line. Who knows what the result is going to be, but it's going to challenge you in a way that's going to prepare you for later on in the season when you see a bit more of this. So, yeah, but Trey Wright, number 2. Man, that kid is a beast, and I'm anxious to see how we handle him.
Yeah, I agree. I think for Washington State, this is going to be a good bellwether of where this team was at. You mentioned it. Most teams improved the most from week 1 to week 2. Cougs were not great across the board in week 1, got the win. This San Diego State team is good. It's a future Pac-12 opponent. You get them at home in your place. If you can win this one, I think it's a good win to springboard you moving forward. When we come back, we're going to be joined by John Schaefer, the voice of the Aztecs, to get an even deeper breakdown on this San Diego State football team. All right, back here on Talkin Cougars, super excited to be joined by the voice of the Aztecs, John Schaefer, in his second year. It's also his second year joining Talkin Cougars. We got to talk last year before that barn burner down in San Diego. This time the Aztecs are coming to the Palouse. John, thank you for joining us. I am fascinated by this San Diego State football team. It's a great roster, great coaching staff. Give me your big picture thoughts on just where this team is at after 1 week.
First of all, I appreciate you having me. And secondly, I think the key for Sean Lewis entering year 2 for him, as the head coach at San Diego State was the retainment. From a team perspective, they didn't have the success they wanted to have, obviously, in year 1, going 3-9. But some of the pieces that really did stand out individually that had good seasons, even though the team didn't win at the level they wanted to, they were able to retain. So I think they just start from a higher point than they were a year ago. And they looked good, obviously, in their opener against an FCS opponent. We'll see where they can go from here.
Absolutely. And you talked about that retention. I mean, just looking at some of the names, you had the headliner's Trey White, right? Led the country in sacks most of the year, ends up, I think, 4th with 12.5 sacks. He was just fantastic. I mean, he tore up Washington State. But you keep going down the roster. That defensive roster returns 4 all-league players. Owen Chambliss at the another defensive end spot. Linebacker position, safety. You had Jordan Napier at the wide receiver position. I looked at that roster and was blown away that in this day and age with portal and NIL, that Sean Lewis could retain so much talent. Can you give any insight on maybe how that played out or what seemed to be the common thread with those guys staying?
Yeah, I think it speaks to 2 points. One of which, Sean Lewis, I think it speaks to him as a head coach because, again, you didn't have the success on field that you were looking to have from a San Diego State perspective. But I think it really shows that the players believe in his vision for the program. And then additionally, you have a lot of San Diegans. At San Diego State, you have a lot of players from Southern California, and you just have a prideful group. I mean, they've really collectively over the last 10 or 15 years won at a high level. And I think there's a lot of pride in where the program has been and where they want to go. And I think within a couple of weeks after the season, there were a lot of graphics that came out on social media of unfinished business. That was basically the mentality of the group coming out of last year and into this year. That includes Trey White, includes some of the players you mentioned, whether it's a Chris Johnson in the secondary, a Tano Latuli, or Owen Chambliss, the linebackers that return. There's some offensive linemen that are back. Jordan Napier, terrific young receiver that entered the portal but elected to return to Sean Lewis in San Diego State. So I just think it's the pride, it's the belief in Sean Lewis, and it's the expectation that they have collectively and what they can accomplish here in 2025.
And it wasn't just the retention. I mean, they went out in the portal and got guys. I mean, and they got impact players from some big programs. The starting quarterback, Jaden Denegal, comes from Michigan, didn't play a lot there, but I've heard from people in circles that he maybe should have gotten a shot to compete this year, and he looked great in week one. You go get Byron Caldwell from Cal and formerly of Oregon, obviously a good running back as a backup potentially, but it seemed like also a lot of success in the portal for the Aztecs.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's well said. Sean Lewis is known as really a wizard with offensive play calling. He called plays last year. He'll call plays again in 2025. He's had some of the most efficient offenses in the country. And Jane Denville is a guy who's out of Southern California. And that's the benefit of being at San Diego State. You're going to potentially get players bouncing back. He was the understudy to J.J. McCarthy. They go undefeated in 2023. He's the number 2 quarterback. He got on the field that year. Limited action because Michigan obviously goes undefeated, but had some success in 2023, elected to come back home in 2025. And he's paired in the quarterback room with Bert Emanuel Jr., who's a terrific athlete, was at Central Michigan. His father spent 10 years in the NFL. And we saw Bert Emanuel Jr. on the field at times in week one as well as the Aztecs, beat Stony Brook 42-0. So saw both of the quarterbacks. I think they're high on both of the quarterbacks. I think they'll both have opportunities throughout the course of 2025. But you're right. I think they've had success in the portal. I think that being in San Diego is beneficial with the level of high school football that's played here. You mentioned obviously like a Byron Cardwell Jr. who played at Oregon and Cal, but their running back room's all San Diegans. Lucky Sutton, Cardwell Jr., Christian Washington, and that's something that again San Diego's produced so many high-level tailbacks, and we've got 3 of them on this roster right now as your top 3 tailbacks.
Yeah, I'm sensing that common thread of where a lot of this roster comes from. It makes sense with San Diego and Southern California, really being a football hotbed for sure. You mentioned the running back room. Lucky Sutton rushed for over 100 yards against Stony Brook. I think total over 200 yards for the team. Just thinking offensively, you mentioned the efficiency for Coach Lewis and the way he likes to call plays. What can Coug fans expect from this offense? Is it going to be pretty balanced? Is it kind of take what the defense gives you? Is he going to try and throw it more, you think, versus a tough Coug D?
Yeah, it's funny. I've heard Sean say a lot over the last couple of years, like, if the defense gives you something, they ultimately are giving you the game. So the job of the play caller obviously is to work to the advantage that the defense is providing to you, but they love being balanced. You look at some of the Kent State offenses that were like top 5 in the nation in total offense. He had a year where they were number 1 in total offense, and they were extremely balanced. I think it's been a misconception that a Sean Lewis offense wants to stretch the field only in the passing game. You look at the way he calls plays, and it's almost using the run and the RPO to set up the passing game. But of course, they want to get vertical. Of course, they want to get wide. They're going to use every inch of the field. And their offensive line, I think, is vastly improved from where it was a year ago. There were some factors in there. They didn't have the scholarship depth probably at the offensive line position last year. They had an injury in week 1 to their left tackle, Joe Bourgeon, who's now back. And they've got bookend tackles. I mean, Bourgeon is 6'8", 6'9". On the other side, you have Christian Jones, who's 6'8", 6'9". So they're bigger and they're stronger. They're more physical up front. Penalties were a huge story last year, procedural penalties, and it appeared as if they cleaned a lot of that up in week 1. So, I think it starts with both the offensive and defensive lines, in the trenches, so to speak. And I think they're improved in those areas, and that gives them a chance to be more successful.
Certainly feels like a big jump from year 1 to year 2. Year 1, 3-9 under Sean Lewis, but this team seems like it's really trending in the right direction. And the thing that stands out to me on tape is that defense that returns 11 starters. I talked about 4 of those earning all conference honors. We know about Trey White. Maybe just give us a quick high level thought on the defense, but also maybe some other players we should keep an eye on as Coug fans look at a really talented Aztec defense.
A year ago in the second half of the season, as the season wore on, the Aztecs got run on to a pretty good clip. And I think that's an area where they take a lot of pride in. If you look at San Diego State's recent history, they've been among the best run defenses in the country over the last 10 or 15 years. So I think that's an area that they wanted to stir up in the offseason. So they've gotten kind of bigger and stronger up the middle. But at all three levels, like you said, with 11 returning starters, there's no team in America with more returning starters because you can't have more than 11, obviously, on any side of the ball. But I mean, their linebackers are young and talented. Tano Latuli and Owen Shambliss, they love both of them. And the secondary has playmakers everywhere, whether it's the corners, some of the returning safeties as well. I mentioned Chris Johnson earlier, Bryce Phillips on the other side at corner. So again, it's a physical group. It's a group that I think wants to improve on where they were in the second half last year, where that run defense probably wasn't up to their standard. But they've always been able to get off after the passer. And we saw that last year with Trey White. He's going to draw so much attention. What does that mean for the other side, the additional edge rushers this year? And even in week one, I think it provided other opportunities. August Salvati had a sack and a half against Stony Brook. So I think Trey White's going to draw the attention. What does that mean for his teammates, and how do they capitalize as we move on as this season progresses?
Well, it's a scary, deep, talented group if you're a Coug fan, and a Coug offense that struggled at times last week, John, thank you so much for joining us on Talking Cougs. We'll look forward to catching up this weekend in Pullman.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Alex.
Back here on Talking Cougars, Season 3, Episode 2, previewing the San Diego State Aztecs. Awesome to have John Schaefer with us. Bump, it's time for our predictions, man. This is a tough matchup. We talked about it. We heard about all the players on both sides. How do you think this game's going to play out?
I think it's going to be a physical game. I think that early it's going to be sloppy. It's going to be grimy. It's going to be San Diego State blitzing and coming from depth and doing all this wild stuff, seeing if this offense can handle it. But then I think eventually Potter settles down. You figure out how you want to attack this defense. You hit them east-west. You get these guys running, and you tire them out defensively. We are going to be aggressive as well. We talked about Francil in the game, getting after the quarterback and hitting the running back. I think we got another close one. I think you grow from that Vandals game, but you win this ball game 17-14. Cougs with the W, 2-0.
Gosh, great minds think alike, Bump. I'm thinking this game's going to stay under 21 points for both teams for sure. A couple good defenses. I think that Coug defense is even better than advertised, potentially very physical, a good matchup against this San Diego State offense. And I think for the Cougs offensively, you have to remember, Danny Freund did not call the plays last year for South Dakota State. He had given those up when he came over from North Dakota, where he called plays for a long time. So just like players, Bump, coaches have to get back in the groove a little bit too. And I think Coach Freund is going to learn from that week one tape. And I want to see how he gets those running backs into the offense in a different way than just handing the ball off downfield. We're going to find out real early if that Coug offense can get a little bit more creative. I'd love to see Angel Johnson with the ball in his hands out on the edge though, not inside the box. Let him cook outside the hash marks, outside the numbers with some screens, some swing passes, get him in the passing game. Maybe a little more Leo Pualasi, who we saw have that big catch, right, in that final drive for Washington State. I'm interested to see what changes the offense makes, because they're going to need to make some, because this is a good San Diego State defense, as we talked about, very physical, particularly in the box. I think the Cougs come away with a win. I like it. I like it under 21 points for both teams. I'm going to call it 20-14. A couple field goals in there. Our man Jack Stevens is going to stay hot.
All right, let's get it. Come on, Cougs. Let's start 2-0, man. It's been another great episode with my guy, Alex Brink. I'm Michael Bumpus. This weekend, I'll be working for CW in the studio. Holler at me on Saturday during the week, 10 to 2, Bump and Stacey show. And on Sundays, I'm the host of the Seahawks pre-halftime and post-game show, Michael Bumpus 5, on all social media platforms.
I'm Alex Brink, former Washington State quarterback. You can find me on X at AlexBrink10 to talk some ball. I got a special assignment this week, Bump. I'm going to be on the CW also for this game, Washington State versus San Diego State. I'm going to be being the sideline analyst, super fired up for that. My man Grady Emerson is going to be filling in for me in the booth, so catch me on the CW for this game. That's a wrap for Talking Cougars Season 3, Episode 2.